everybody, my name is Katie, and in this video I wanted to share with you how it is that I finally got sober from alcohol after a near 10-year battle of trying to control my drinking and trying to stop drinking. If you're familiar with my channel, you know my story, so thank you for being here. And if you're new, welcome. I really wanted to make this video for people who are out there struggling right now and scouring YouTube just like I did for an answer to how to finally overcome alcohol addiction and stop relapsing or just have more control of your drinking. So this is my story. As I said, I struggled with alcohol for 10 years almost, basically throughout all of my 20s. And at first it was fun, and then I started to realize that it was a problem because I couldn't really take breaks from drinking. I was drinking every single day. And that's when I really tried to start moderating or tried to quit a number of times. So many times I tried to quit. And the longest I ever made it to sobriety was 6 months, but I kept relapsing because I was craving alcohol, I was triggered, everything would cause me to want to drink, whether it was a good day, a bad day, a thought, a smell, a person, an experience, all of these things caused me to want alcohol. And so I just struggled for, like I said, nearly a decade. And no matter how much I would try to kind of moderate my drinking, I would just plan, I'm going to have 2 drinks tonight. I'm not going to have more. I would almost always have more. And if I didn't have more, it was really me kind of white knuckling it and forcing myself not to drink. And so this went on for a long time until I found a method about 3 years ago that ultimately got me sober. And as I make this video in October 2020, I am now 2 years, a little more than 2 years sober from alcohol, with literally zero desire to drink or to go back to it. I just don't miss it at all. And so the method that I use to get sober is something known as the Sinclair Method. It involves taking a medication called Naltrexone, and you take it in combination with drinking. You only take it about 1 to 2 hours before you drink. And what this medication does is essentially it blocks the rewarding effects of alcohol, because when you drink, it's very rewarding on the brain. We produce tons of endorphins, and that's how we can become addicted to it, because as humans, we are wired to seek pleasure and go after rewarding experiences like alcohol and food and sex and all of these things that are really pleasurable. And so when you incorporate this medication into your drinking, what it's doing is it's blocking, like I said, the rewarding experience of alcohol. And so you can still get intoxicated on the method, you can still get drunk, it can still even be really fun to drink. And for me, it was still fun for me to drink for about a year on this method. But what it did differently is it gave me an off switch. And by that, I mean, I was someone who was drinking a bottle of wine every night, plus more on the weekends. But when I started on this method, and now it takes time, but what happened was I was gradually able to reduce how much I was drinking in a drinking session. I could no longer finish a bottle of wine. No longer did I want to finish a bottle of wine. I just felt satiated. And I was also able to start having more days without alcohol, where I just genuinely didn't want to drink. And this had never happened to me before this method. If I was having a day off of alcohol, it was very white-knuckled. I was, forcing it, just telling myself I couldn't drink because I've been drinking too much. And it was really hard, like I said, to really control how much I was drinking when I was drinking, no matter how hard I would try, and no matter how hard I would kind of set an intention to have control that night. And so this method worked gradually for me over the course of a year. I got started on the medication, and let me say first, I'm someone who is very anti-pharmaceutical. I don't want to take medications. I don't like to take a medication if I don't need to. But this was the thing that really helped me with my alcohol. And the medication that you take, Naltrexone is the name in the US. It's a generic drug. It's very cheap. It's very safe. There's no major risks or side effects with it. Of course, talk to a doctor. This is not medical advice. But in the research I've done and really being an advocate for this for the past few years, it's a really safe medication. And again, it's not something you take when you're not drinking. You only take it in combination with drinking. So today I'm over 2 years sober, and I haven't taken the medication in over 2 years. So just back to it, how this medication worked for me, I was on the method for 1 year. And with this method, you don't necessarily have to quit drinking if you don't want to. What this method allows someone to do is really have more control over drinking. And so, as I said, people can have the off switch and they can just be able to stop at a couple drinks and not just binge drink. And they can have more days without alcohol. And so, as I was going on this method, I was starting out about drinking almost every single day, and I started to reduce the number of days I was drinking within the first week or two on the method. I just genuinely didn't want to drink anymore, and so I would take a day off where I just genuinely didn't want to drink. And when I would drink far less than I was before the method. And this was a gradual experience. It wasn't like an overnight quick fix, but with time, I just saw myself, I'd be drinking 5 days a week in the first month. And then the next month I was drinking 4 days a week. And sometimes I would have 1 drink and not want more. Other times I'd have 2 or 3 and not want more. But it was just this gradual reduction of drinking over time. And one of the biggest changes I noticed in myself on this method was how much I was thinking about and obsessing about and craving alcohol. I did not realize how much I was craving alcohol until this medication and this method started to erase and undo those cravings. I remember for me, like I'd be at work and 4 o'clock, I'd just be like, oh, I can't wait home to open my bottle of wine. Even on the weekends, I would day drink a lot. And so it's like Saturday morning, I'd be like, oh, I can't wait to go out and get a drink. I was just like always thinking about alcohol. And as I got on this method, 4 o'clock would roll around and I wouldn't be thinking about alcohol. And I'd be like, oh, I kind of forgot to drink tonight, or I forgot to think about drinking. And that just continued to happen the longer I was on the method. And again, my cravings for alcohol were going away as well. And that's what happens with this method. The end goal is ultimately what's known as pharmacological extinction. And so with enough repeated experience of someone drinking in combination with the medication, it allows them to reach what's known as pharmacological extinction, which ultimately means the person is returned to the state they were in pre-addiction. So their brain is not wired to crave alcohol or to desire alcohol. They're basically returned to the state they were in, again, before they ever got addicted. And so once someone reaches that place, they can still drink alcohol if they choose in combination with the medication. But it can also give them an option to go sober much more easily because you just genuinely don't enjoy drinking anymore, or you don't crave it like you used to. And you might have a drink every once in a while on the method. Like I've known people who've been on this for years and they save drinking for the weekend or for special occasions. But for me, I chose to go sober just because after 1 year on this method, I really didn't enjoy drinking anymore. Like I had kind of built up a life that was so full and enjoyable and fun and meaningful that alcohol kind of put a dampening on all of that. Like it didn't really bring anything good to my life anymore. And so for me, I decided to go sober, and that was over 2 years ago. And I can honestly say that I do not miss alcohol at all. I don't feel triggered to drink. And in fact, I tell people that I feel relapse proof just because I feel as though that alcohol addiction, it's hard for me to believe that like that even existed because I don't think about alcohol in the same way anymore. It kind of is like an inanimate object to me. Like if there's a bottle of wine sitting there, I can just be like, oh, it's a bottle of wine. Like, oh, it's a brush or it's a stapler or something. It's just, it has no emotional story behind it. Whereas before, a bottle of wine, I'd be thinking about it. When are we going to open it? I can't have that, or I want that. So it really undoes all of that. And so I feel relapse proof because I don't look to alcohol in the same way as I used to. Kind of like how I've never been a smoker. I've never smoked cigarettes. And so I don't like worry every day that like, oh, I might go out and become a smoker today. It just doesn't even occur to me because it's something I've never done and I have no interest in trying it. And so that's what it feels like with alcohol. Like I just no interest in trying it. It's as if it never even happened. And that's like the real beauty of this method, the AA way. And I know people in AA, and I think it's a great program for the people it works for. But you kind of have to live your life as an alcoholic and go around every day, like counting the days you're sober and calling yourself an alcoholic. And it's like a lifelong struggle. And for me, I don't feel like that. Again, it just feels like something that's like a thing in my past that I don't have to worry about. With that said, sometimes I get pushback from people like, oh, you can't just take a pill to fix your drinking problem. And this is partially true. Like, I wouldn't be sober today, I don't think, if it wasn't for this medication treatment, because again, it allowed me to unlearn alcohol addiction and get rid of the cravings. And so that pill, it saved my life, really. But there is this other component to it, obviously, that requires someone to change their habits around drinking and find new ways to cope. Those are like the two biggest, I think, reasons why we drink. Is it's a coping mechanism. It's like a best friend to us when we've had a bad day, or even when we've had a good day. It's our best friend to celebrate with, and it's also a habit. Like, I didn't realize how ingrained my Friday night drinks were until I was like, the medication was taking away that desire to drink, and here I was still drinking, and I was like, oh, this is a habit I need to shift. And so it does take some engagement in the process, because sometimes when people rely too heavily on the medication, they may not see changes that they were hoping to see, because they're just stuck in the habit, or they're still using alcohol as a tool to cope, as opposed to creating other different, healthier ways to cope. And so yeah, that is the Sinclair Method, and how it is that I finally got sober from alcohol. Like I said, this method doesn't require a person to stop drinking, so if the thought of going sober to you right now sounds incredibly daunting and not something you want to do, that's the beauty of this method. When I first went on it, I was not planning to go sober at all. I just wanted to have more control over my drinking. I wanted to have better health. I didn't want to binge drink anymore. And that's what I did for a year on this method. I drank with control, and it was so empowering to see myself leave wine in the glass and say no to drinks and genuinely mean it, and like genuinely not want drinks, or have like several days in a row without alcohol. It was so empowering, because I truly changed the way I looked at and thought about alcohol. I became a, normal drinker, or whatever that means. But yeah, you don't have to go sober on this method. Again, that wasn't my intention, but just after being on it for a year and really falling out of love with alcohol, and just saying like, oh, my life is so much better without it. I don't even really like it anymore. It was really easy to let it go. But I know people who have been on this method for years, and they, like I said, they drink on special occasions, or weekends, or they save it for the times when they really want to drink, and they can drink in control on the medication. Another common question I get from people is, do you have to be on the medication for life? My answer to that is yes, and I think a lot of physicians I know that treat this method would agree with that, and the doctor who discovered this would say the same as well. And by the way, there's a lot of scientific research out there about the efficacy of this method. It's got a 78% success rate with people, so it's really highly effective. And if you just go online and search Dr. David Sinclair, or the Sinclair Method, or Naltrexone, you can find the scientific information. And it's also on a nonprofit called the C3 Foundation. It's c3foundation.org. They have the scientific studies on there, and it's on my website as well, embodydaily.com. So you can find all of the research and information about the science and the evidence behind this method and how well it works for people. But yes, my opinion, and other physicians as well, is yes, you do need to stay on the medication for the duration of the time you're drinking. With that said, I've known one person, maybe more, who's been able to return to drinking in moderation once they've reached extinction and they no longer need the medication. But if I were to ever drink again, I would definitely take the medication beforehand, just because I know that the addiction can be learned. And I've just had too many benefits from getting alcohol out of my life, and getting more in control with it. So I would take the medication for if I were to drink again. So yeah, I think that's all. There are resources linked below for how you can find more information about this method. With regards to getting your hands on the medication and getting a prescription for it, most general practitioners are not familiar with this method, so they may not prescribe it. I hear from a lot of people who, their doctors don't know anything about addiction, and so they might refer them to AA or rehab. So you may want to try to get it from your general practitioner, but often I hear them say no. So there is a directory of physicians linked below on C3 Foundation's website. These are doctors who, a lot of them are telemedicine based, and some are in person as well, but you can meet with a doctor who's really knowledgeable and familiar with this method and can prescribe you the medication and work with you throughout the method. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.